Hello people out there and welcome back to the Her Game 2 podcast. This is the first Her Game 2 Cricket podcast and I'm joined by Hannah Thompson-Radford.
Hello. Thanks for having me.
No problem. How you doing?
Yeah, no, I'm well, thank you.
Good. Hannah, you are one of the hosts of Women's Cricket Chat podcast. Is that right?
Yeah, so myself and Alex Pereira co-founded Women's Cricket Chat back in January 2021 now. So we've been going for almost 18 months. Absolutely loving talking about cricket.
So Women's Cricket Chat, how did that come about? How did you start it? You say it wasn't yourself. Was you just sat down one day and had a light bulb moment?
Yeah, it was something that I've been wanting to do for ages, to be fair. But I never really had the confidence to do it or pursue it. Got involved with a diversification of the media program through BComs, nice. An amazing organisation, and met Alex through that. And then obviously COVID happened and lockdown, and it was one of those moments where obviously you had a bit more time on your hands at home and trying to get through all of those moments. We were like, right, let's do something. And I approached Alex knowing that she had a broadcast journalism background, so she could do all the editing and also do the presenting too. And we just kind of went from there, to be honest. It was a lockdown project that selfishly for us as people who wanted to get into cricket media, we could get experience out of it ourselves. But also the other part of me is my academic side and my research, where I look at women's cricket and the media coverage and moan a lot. And I was like, well, I can't just moan about it. I need to do something practical about it myself. So that's where Women's Cricket Chat was kind of born from. And now we've got a team of 5 of us with Cassie Coombs, Mahika Varshney and Georgie Heath, who just chat all about women's cricket.
Awesome. I love that. My lockdown project was building an old arcade games machine, and now it just sits in the garage collecting dust. I feel like yours was a bit more productive and you got more out of it and you've sort of given back to society, whereas I just regained my virginity by building an arcade machine, but there we go. So it's all solely focused on women's cricket, is it? I know you do lots of interviews on there.
Yeah, so that does include like men's voices as well. It's not just explicitly female voices. It's just anybody who's working in the women's game, players, administrators, coaches, former players, trying to bring the best out of people whose stories perhaps haven't been told so much, who deserve the recognition, who historically haven't had recognition, because I'm sure we'll come on to all of the kind of sexism and stuff that women have experienced in the game before. But it's a celebration podcast. Sometimes it can be a little bit too fluffy, but I think there is a space for that as well, because obviously within women's sport coverage, we need to be more critical and we need to, enhance that side of the games too. But we're just about celebrating people, telling their stories, ensuring that their voices are amplified and they have a platform to talk about themselves and get that recognition, as I mentioned.
It's interesting you say that. Do you find that there is a more of an urge to be not nicer to people, but do you find you go easier on the players because you're trying to like magnify their voices?
A little bit. So that's kind of a key tension that I've kind of played for myself, because when I analyse within my PhD research and stuff about media coverage, and I'm like, if it's patronising and too fluffy this, and, we need to be more critical, and players are calling for more criticality and everything. But then at the same time, if you want to go down the human side of it and the features article kind of vibes of a podcast that talks about their stories, we can still have some critical discussions in that. But it's just, I don't know. I'm not really explaining this very well.
No, you are. No, I think it's a genuinely interesting point, and I'm glad you brought up as a host of a women's cricket podcast.
Yeah, it's a really key tension and everything. It's something that I was really uncomfortable to begin with, because we don't just want to be like, oh my God, women's cricket's amazing. Like, it's great. There's so many kind of like structural inequalities and so many experiences that aren't great that need to be spoken about. And it's how best we do that. And we're trying to find a good balance with it and everything. But I do think there is a space as well to have that celebratory piece, to have the bit that does amplify their voices and give the players a platform to talk about whatever they want to talk about. And we don't really dictate that at all. We just kind of throw the questions out there and however they respond. And we talk to them beforehand as well about what they want to talk about, and administrators in the game. And we do a lot about representation. We've had a lot of South Asian women on our podcast talking about that very fact, because obviously at that elite level, there's just not enough diversity when it comes to race, ethnicity. So we're trying to be as intersectional as possible as well. But just going back to that tension in my head now, I don't want to sell us short, because what we do is amazing.
Oh, 100% it is. Yeah.
Yeah, and I don't want to criticize it, because
No, I wouldn't dream of doing so.
yeah, it is good, but at the same time, I think there needs to be more voices that do that critical side of the game and talk about analysis and performances and all those amazing things, because that's not quite my skill set yet. It's something that I am working on. But yeah, the people stories is what we're all about at the moment.
So where do you see this going in the long term?
Yeah, so I would love for it to be kind of like a hub of women's cricket content, just generally. So we'd love to be able to take the podcast and do YouTube series and videos and get out to kind of clubs as well, and capture content just of everybody in the game, just trying to create women's cricket chat as a space for everyone to have their stories told, heard, but as a kind of a fun, safe space. It doesn't need to be too kind of overly serious. I think there's a lot of female content creators at the moment rising up and who are doing amazing work, like Abby Slade and Rhiannon Blake, showing what it's like to play cricket for the first time. And we want to show that kind of stuff. And we want to show the elite end as well, where you can really humanise and get to know who your kind of favourite players are. But at the moment, it's a long game at the moment. We're all balancing so much stuff at home ourselves, like full-time jobs and stuff. Like, we'd love this to be our full-time work.
Yeah, obviously.
At the moment it is just voluntary. Looking for sponsors at the moment, and hopefully I've got some conversations next week with some people that hopefully, fingers crossed, we'll get somebody signed up to be able to help us financially, because we are limited with what we can do. And sometimes people do take that for granted, because if people are doing it for free, they don't seem to need to pay for it themselves.
Yeah, I say that all the time. If you're willing to do it for free, no one's going to pay you to do it, unfortunately. That is the cruel capitalist world we live in. But a lot of that sounds like, now, I'm a professional when it comes to the podcast game. Don't let anyone tell you I'm not. I did a bit of research on you, as in, I read your Twitter bio. It says you're a board member for the Girls Cricket Club. After going on the website and reading up a bit about that, it seems similar to what you've just been describing. Would I be right in saying that?
Yeah, no, I guess so, yeah. So it's still early days with the Girls Cricket Club board and everything. We haven't had too much to do at the moment, but it's kind of work in progress, working group and everything. And what Lydia Greenway is doing with the Girls Cricket Club is absolutely phenomenal. And again, it's just about those networks and building up a group of people. It's not a singular voice that can change women's cricket media or women's cricket generally. It's going to be a collective effort. So what she's doing is unreal. She's got a group of people with many different skill sets sat on that board who can help shape the direction of the women and girls game.
So what would you say are the issues in the media, the women's media, that you've hinted at a couple of times now?
I think the main thing is just the expectation of free labour. There's a lot of us volunteering, and it's a double-edged sword. If you want to work in the media, like, you have to do this voluntary experience and everything, and you have to kind of pay the way and make it yourself. But that comes at a cost, and like mental health, time, burnout. Like, I've experienced burnout far too many times trying to like make my own media career. And I think people don't realise as well, for me, like, I'm 27 now. I've been trying to work in cricket media for the last 15 years. No, 12 years, since I was 15.
Yeah, 12.
I actually did well at GCSE maths, surprisingly. Baby brain at the moment. But yeah, no, so for the last 12 years, and it's only now where I'm starting to get more opportunities. And that's come off of a lot of like hard graft and volunteering, which not everybody can afford to volunteer. It's only because I went to Loughborough, well, I'm still at Loughborough Uni, but it's only because I went to Loughborough University that they've had so many amazing opportunities to be able to volunteer, and you get your student loan and all that kind of stuff, that I could afford to do it. But I'm a working class kind of girl, not from a privileged background whatsoever. And I know that there's people in my situation who haven't gone to uni, for example, who would never be able to have the opportunities that I've had, or the kind of the belief, or just meeting certain people that have allowed me to open doors to get to where I am now. And I'm only at the start of my media kind of career now, getting these opportunities. So I think that's one of the hardest things for people who are passionate about promoting the women's game and working in women's cricket media, is the lack of opportunities that currently exist that are paid opportunities, alongside, having to kind of knock down that door yourself. You need to have that self-belief. You need to have that proactiveness. Nobody's going to hand it to you. And I think it is it is definitely changing. People are offering more kind of diversity programs, and there's currently a program with the cricket writers who will pay you to go and do a placement somewhere. So if I wasn't having having my baby next month, I was going to be going to Wisden, and they were going to be paying for my kind of transport down and stuff, which obviously financially, is amazing. So for anybody who's like listening and thinking, oh, I'd love to do cricket media and stuff, but I can't afford to do a free placement, or I can't afford to do some volunteering, reach out to the Cricket Writers Club. There's amazing people doing unreal things behind the scenes to make it more affordable and accessible for people who just can't afford it.
Yeah, definitely. So moving on from that, why cricket? Of all sports, why cricket? When did you first fall in love, and why did you choose the world's longest game to fall in love with?
Yeah, to be fair, I didn't really know it was that long when I was growing up. So, like one days and T20s and stuff. A family affair. And when I talk about, being working class and not from privileged background and stuff, there's privileges that I've experienced that I took for granted when I was younger. Like I lived in a village. There was a field down the road. My uncle was part of a cricket club. And that influence early on is such a privilege. And it's obviously amazing to have those influences in your life and that accessibility to green space. So I literally just got involved with local village cricket team from the age of, I think I was about 7 or 8 maybe. Initially, my brother went down. He was younger than me. And me being the sporty kid, already kind of playing football and everything else going, I was like, right, I'm going to play. And absolutely loved it, was decent at it, and just kind of got stuck in there, to be fair.
Who was your local team?
So I played for Middlesbrough, a small little village, and then in Somerset, so supported Somerset growing up, and played within the Pathways programme as well for about 10 or so years, from I think it was under 13s. I don't think it was under 11s at the time, but from that age through to under 19s and a few senior women's games as well.
So when I was a kid, there was no hope of playing cricket for me, purely because you need a lot of equipment. With football, you need a ball, and you don't even need another person. A wall will do, or a pair of jumpers. Like, it was almost like it was locked behind a gate for me. I couldn't even tell you where my local cricket club when I was a kid. Did you find it hard breaking in, particularly as a female? Was it hard to sort of get your foot in the door to begin with, or were they quite welcoming to you?
I think that's the biggest thing as well that you mentioned, cost. Like, I had no idea the sacrifices that my mum made when I was growing up to be able to, transport me around places, and the lifts that other people's families and stuff would offer, and all those kind of things. You just don't realise when you're younger. And that's the biggest thing with cricket, is that cost factor, like I mentioned about the media kind of careers. But going into kind of the village scene and everything, it's such a small village. I grew up with the lads since I was kind of 2 years old and everything. Everyone knew who I was. It was more opposition. And then when I played like men's cricket, again, it was opposition. And I laugh about it now, but at the time, it's just not funny and everything. But there was times where I've kind of tweeted about this and moaned about this a lot. But when you're 16, 17, playing in a men's team, and you're there in your whites and you're getting ready for the team photo, kind of a proud day because you're so passionate about playing the game, and you're with your boys and everything like that. And the photographer goes, "Why are you in the photo?
Really?
Are you the team mascot?" I said,
Wow.
no. Are you the tea lady?
Wow.
And things like that just really kind of, I remember just being so angry and everything, but I kind of channeled that within my game and everything. I took it so seriously, and I used to play kind of really well and prove a point, but I shouldn't have had to have proven a point.
Did you find that you sort of, sorry to interrupt, did you find you used to laugh it off as banter, or did it hurt you at the time?
Depends on, so that really hurt me at the time. I remember that, like, it's still so kind of vivid now. There's other things, like, kind of, I got a lot of kind of sexualized comments and things like that, which I would banter off and just kind of laugh about, it's so funny kind of thing. Whereas now I go back in, I'm like, I was like six. Well, I started playing men's cricket at 13, and I was getting comments about, oh, are you wearing a boob guard
Oh
and
my
this and that.
God.
Yeah, which now is like, this is so weird. I'm playing, when you play village cricket or whatever, you've got all ages, you've got young lads in their kind of 12, 13s as well, all the way up to, I remember playing against an old bloke who was in his 70s.
Yeah.
Which just reminded me of an occasion where kind of I bowled this old bloke out, and he said it was a no ball and told his young umpire to call it a no ball, which it wasn't and stuff. But
Of
yeah,
course.
there was that resistance as well. Oh, I can't get out to a girl and I can't do this.
Yeah.
And that kind of stuff used to wind me up too, because I was like, what, but why? Why does it matter that I'm a girl? Like, it's not embarrassing because you got bowled out by a girl. Like, I'm just another player on the team. But that went on a hell of a lot.
Do you think it's changed at all recently?
This is the only thing, because quite a lot of my experiences now is so kind of engraved from kind of like 10 years ago.
Yeah, it's hard to really know, isn't it?
Yeah, because I'm just not fixated on them, but I think they really did impact my kind of beliefs and how I kind of have followed in my career now. Like, I wouldn't be looking at gender and sport and inequalities and things like that within my professional life if I hadn't had those experiences.
Really,
and
you think it laid the groundwork?
Oh, 100%. Like, all of those experiences, it's made me who I am today. Like, I wouldn't be as driven, I wouldn't be as proactive, and I wouldn't have such a passion to challenge these kind of issues without having experience with myself. Like, I don't want other women and girls to experience what I went through when I was growing up. But it's also interesting because players talk about this all the time, especially those at the elite end, talking about, playing boys and men's cricket, it made me more competitive and it's made me the player I am today in a really good light. But I think more conversation needs to be had on the other side of that, of, yes, it's made you more competitive, but also what were the downsides?
Yeah, definitely.
Because like mentally and stuff, like when you get told you're not good enough all the time just because of your gender, it does affect you. Like, my confidence is always suffered.
The other thing is, you're talking to elite sports women who have made it. They will say, yes, it made us, but how many are there out there that had a few comments like that and said, forget this, I'm not coming back here again, sell me equipment, I'll do something else. Exactly. I'll do what I'm supposed to do, what stereotypes of this world tell me I'm supposed to do. You're only talking to the successful ones. So yeah, it's interesting. How about as you got older, at sort of in your cricket media career, when you're out and about at the county grounds, do you hear much sexism there, or?
Yeah, so for me, I did work experience at Somerset County Cricket Club back when I was kind of 15, and really lucky they kind of kept me on each summer for 4 years to work in the commercial team, and I was on reception doing tickets and membership, and got to interact with some of the journalists who came in. And at that time, as a 15 to 19-year-old, I never came across any female journalists.
Really? Not one?
So the only person I came across was when Isha Guha was on Sky, and that was the first person I saw as a broadcaster. And I remember just staring at her being like, oh, there's a woman here. I didn't realise like women could, go into cricket media and stuff. Yeah. Because I didn't have anybody in my kind of connections back then who worked in cricket media at all. Like, my world, thanks to without social media, I would not be doing anything like what I'm doing now. Like, even having conversations like this, it all kind of stems from the power of like networks and being able to get your work out there and be seen and link up with people. But for me, back at home, there was just no one. There's just absolutely no one. that I could talk to about anything media-wise. And I'd always had a passion to write up like under 17s match reports and things like that for our cricket team and everything like that. But when it came to looking at university courses and stuff, I went to one open day and for sports journalism, and it was all guys. And one of the lecturers kind of put me off a little bit about sports journalism. So that's the kind of short story of why I went to Loughborough and did English and sports science instead to begin with. But just going back to your initial question, because I'm meandering.
No,
But yeah, it's kind of a lot of my experiences of cricket media in my former years were just men.
Yeah.
And I got told as well that I was too polite, too quiet, too nice to be a journalist, that I needed to be more ballsy, and like being kind isn't a strength for journalism.
That's a bad thing, like obviously.
And now I can laugh about it and I can joke about it, but it's taken me kind of all these years to realise that I don't have to change to fit what somebody thinks a journalist is.
Absolutely.
And being kind and empathetic is a strength.
Absolutely.
And it sounds very self-indulgent to be like, oh, I'm so kind or whatever, but I don't know why people think that's problematic.
It may have been different 20, 30, 40 years ago, but I'd say being polite, kind and courteous opens more doors than trying to kick them open these days. I did a journalism degree, but I started it. I gave up after a year or so for various reasons. I just hated university. It doesn't suit me at all. But you're right. Every single person on that sports journalism side of it was male. And I never even realised that until you've just said it. And I've thought back and actually, yeah, you were right. And yeah, but you know what? We was kind of told you've got to be arseholes, essentially. But the world's moved on, and a lot of it is social media, as you say. There are loads of people out there doing stuff for free, as you say. So these big companies can pick and choose the people they want to work with now, rather than the ones that are spat out by universities. But social media is a double-edged sword, isn't it? As you say, we wouldn't be having this conversation now if it wasn't for social media. But social media is part of the reason we need to have this conversation now. It was Lancashire Thunder and Lancashire Lightning. They had the women in the headline spot the other day, and someone had a problem with it because he couldn't go and watch his men's team after work. And I can't remember his tweet verbatim, but he tweeted something like, the reason I'm a member at Lancashire is so I can watch the men's team play in the headline spot after work. Like, completely missing the point that all the people that want to watch the women's team can watch the women's team in the headline spot after work. If you can't, like, how selfish can you be to solely focus on yourself and what you want in life and disregard anyone that wants to watch the women's team? And that is social media in a nutshell, I think.
Yeah, it's double headers as well. So, like, with cricket and double headers, historically, they've been so kind of like poorly organised, and the women get the change room that's a mile away to the ground. The dugouts are for the men's match later on, so you've got to be in part of the stand instead, and the pitch that you play on, and all of these other kind of inequalities, even the tickets. So trying to find tickets for one of the matches, a large venue who have improved since thanks to the 100, but one venue in particular, I emailed them because I was working for Loughborough Lightning in the KSL at the time, and a fan kind of got in touch saying, oh, where can I get a ticket? And I was like, oh, you get them from this person's website. Had a look and I was like, I can't find it anywhere. It was on a small print. Please note, this match also includes Loughborough Lightning versus Western Storm, or whoever it was at the time. So I emailed the club being like, hi, I'm sure you don't mean to, put our game in this way. The response I got
really
was, it wasn't pleasant. No. And it was like I was making a massive deal out of something that's so small. But I was like, if people don't know where the game is, it's not a double header. You're not doing it equally at all. And it just makes it more difficult for fans. And like, one of the biggest problems for women's cricket is we need to get more spectators, and we need to get people seeing these games. And how do you do that? You make it more accessible. You get the information out there nice and easy, and put in a double header on where it's just like a please note this match also includes, without any further promotion.
Yeah, almost like a PS at the bottom.
Yeah, and it literally said PS, this match also includes. No. And that's not a standalone case. That happens a lot. But we have seen a shift now with the 100, showing how double headers can work and how they can be actually really positive. And you can get crowd numbers in, which is obviously brilliant. And we can try and convert some of the men's fans into the women's game as well. But the thing that impressed me with the 100 was just the whole way that the players were treated. They weren't shoved in changing rooms down the road or anything like this. They weren't secondary to the men's training slots. It was very equal in the way that it was all organised. And that was the first glimpse of me to feel like, actually, double headers can work. And we can be a collective unit. It can just be cricket. It doesn't have to be women's cricket, men's cricket. You can just go and support your one team, but it's two different genders playing it.
Yeah, definitely. With excuse me, with you say about the women's teams, not only the tickets, they're not that easy to find on social media and stuff as well. They haven't got, like, you type in Warwickshire, straight away Bears come up. You'll find them easy. You try and find Central Sparks, not quite as easy. You need to know the that you're looking for to find that account, and they're never blue ticks. So you got to. I know it might seem like a petty thing, but it is effort to follow them. Cricket is hard enough to follow as it is with all the millions of different forms there are, and then even the cricket app I was looking through earlier, just looking at the scores. You try and find the Charlotte Edwards Cup right down the bottom, and you think, the finals on Saturday, let's stick it up the top. Let's promote it a bit more. The 100 has been fantastic. I think I wasn't fully on board with it at first, particularly when you saw those two massive bars at the side of the TV, and I thought, that's 30% of my screen gone by fluorescent bars. I feel like I'm in a nightclub, but I did warm to it, especially after going to a few games. And the way the women's teams were presented was as equal as it's ever been in cricket, I think. I think there's still some way to go, but it was a damn sight closer than it has been for years. I think the 100's been fantastic for the women's game.
Yeah, because I think it absolutely has done. Whether we needed a new format to do that is another conversation.
Yeah,
and I know
definitely.
a lot of people who are anti the 100 and stuff, if that investment had been put into the former KSL, would we have seen similar things? Like, if there's more investment in this regional comp, would we see that kind of profile piece also happening? But you cannot deny what the 100 has done for the women's game in terms of last year's achievements. The only thing that I really didn't like was how, in the promotion material, how kind of glammed up the girls are. Because obviously, hyper feminization and stuff, and the makeup for some players was just so unnatural because they don't wear it so much. And for me, it's all about choice. So I'm not saying players shouldn't wear makeup or players should wear makeup. I'm saying it's definitely a personal choice. And I know for me, from talking to some of the girls, there was a bit of uncomfortableness about some of it, because if it was so heavily done, it's not their match day makeup. It was more like they're going out and more kind of makeup for some players. But it's one of those situations where it was the first proper time where they have been kind of glammed up and everything, and some players were perhaps a little bit too polite to say, well, can you go a little bit lighter here? Or I'd rather not. So that was the only thing for me, was just, which I did feed back to the 100 and had a really good conversation with them about that. So although that is a negative for me, it also does show that they are willing to listen and that they do really see, people like me and others as having an important voice in this conversation.
Were they receptive to it?
Yeah, really receptive. And I think it was really positive that it feels like there's people in charge of the 100, especially women's competition, with like Beth Barrett-Wild and people like that, who genuinely care about the women's game and want it to be the best it can be.
One person or one organisation that perhaps doesn't care so much about the women's game. An article from The Guardian earlier this week featured comments from ICC chief Greg Barclay, stating that women's tests will not be part of the landscape moving forward. There's only been 5 women's test matches since 2015. What are your thoughts on this?
Disgusting, frankly. I saw Raf Nicholson put some tweets out, and I'm not sure if she's responded in an article or not. I think she might have. Basically just calling it out, and I completely agree with her. Like, potentially that the women's game would be better off not in the ICC's hands. How can you have an organisation like with attitudes like that? The men get afforded so many playing opportunities, and women have to be grateful for their one test a year if they get that one test.
Yeah, well, there was a boom period in like the early 2000s where there was a test every year up until 2009. There's now been, what, 2 or 3 since 2015.
It's like, well, there's a long test history. We were coming up to 100 years of test matches for women and everything, and that was the favoured form back in the day. And I think that's what people also forget, is they frame women's cricket as new, and women's cricket and women's sport generally is always new and exciting, forgetting the long history and standing on the shoulders of giants and all of that kind of stuff, which is just so frustrating. It's just so frustrating, and I want to see more red ball cricket, but at the same time, the structures need to be in place across the board and domestically as well. I think it should be on the agenda in the long-term goals, and I think Test cricket should definitely be on there. But I think we also have bigger priorities in terms of ensuring all the structures are in a better place. So while that conversation comes up, I'm also there kind of like waving the flag for, we need Test cricket, but we also need to look at the professionalisation of the global game. We need to look at the opportunities to play for the global game again, look at associate nations, look at how many fixtures they're playing. And I'm doing a little bit of work on this actually about the playing opportunities between men and women. So hopefully we'll get a paper out on that at some point, looking at that disparity, because it isn't fair and it's not equal.
Playing devil's advocate, is there an argument to be made that Test cricket doesn't get anywhere near the attendance it used to? It might do in this country, but certainly around the globe, not so much. Is there an argument to be made that the attendances just aren't there to make it sustainable?
I think that's all from the men's game, though, so it's unfair to perhaps draw a comparison when you're not giving the women an opportunity to prove that interest. But like I said, like, you need those structures there as well to enable that pathway to play red ball cricket. It's unfair for the players to go from practically zero preparation / a couple warm-up matches to then put on this show, which when they put on the show, they have to prove that they deserve another test match. It's not just given to them as a right, oh, they'll get another one. They have to prove that they are, that they deserve this next opportunity, like we saw in the Ashes. Absolutely amazing match in the end, but there was some comments at the end of it, the players felt like they had to prove their worth and savor that moment as well, because they don't know when the next time they get another test match will be. But obviously we know South Africa are coming over for a test match this month, which is obviously really exciting. But again, if that ends in like a boring draw, I bet the first comments will be, oh, women don't deserve another test match, and oh, women's cricket's boring, and the rest of it, which obviously isn't the case, but that's what they're up against.
The great irony being that we can lose, or we can see, was it 13 or 17 wickets go down against New Zealand in the men's game, and no one's saying do they deserve another test match. That test match was over in, 2.5 days, 3 days? No one's saying do they deserve another. We can go over to Australia and get battered 5-0 in the Ashes, but no one's saying should these men even be playing. But do you find the women at almost every game is an opportunity to prove their worth?
Oh, 100%. And it's always taken as a difference. The women's game is always treated differently in that respect. And you have to, it's not just proving that, it's a good game or whatever, it's proving it for your gender. And if there's a drop catch straight away, it's because they're women.
It's a woman, yeah.
Whereas like men drop catches all the time and stuff, and it's not because they're blokes, and they don't get told to get back to the kitchen and the rest of it. And there's one clip of Sarah Glenn bowls a bit slow. People commented on it. Oh, she's so slow, I'd hit her for 6. Oh, it's village standards and whatever. She's like, no, I'm trying to bowl slow. That's the whole point.
It's intentional.
It's intentional, like this kind of preoccupation with like cricket having to be super, super fast and the rest of it, and the women's game so slow and whatever else is a load of nonsense. And I don't think people realise that when they say, "Oh, that's so slow," it's actually a compliment because that's what they're trying
That's
to
the
do.
plan. Yeah, yeah. But then,
So
like when we bring on Collingwood to bowl a bit slower for a bit, no one says a word. That's absolutely that's tactics.
yeah, and that's the thing. And this whole kind of constant comparison that women need to be like men, like there's no need to kind of compare that. So I just don't understand why this like frigidity comes around, I guess, because it's like some men, and there's a hell of a lot of supportive men in the women's game as well.
Oh yeah,
But
absolutely.
some men just feel threatened for some reason and feel very fragile and feel a need to comment things like, "Oh, I don't care about women's sport, I don't care about cricket," but they go out of the way to do it, which makes no sense. And put these swings out about village standards and, "Oh, she bowls slower than my 13-year-old boy," and all these other things. It's just so unnecessary, and these players have to deal with that because at the end of the day, quite a few of these players don't have agents and stuff, so they're receiving these comments directly themselves on social media. I looked at, for my master's dissertation a few years back, the coverage of the 2017 World Cup coverage, which one journalist, for some reason, decided that he was going to write an article the day after England win the World Cup. He wrote a whole kind of 1,000-word piece about why England women are not as good as the men, and how Anya Shrubsole, despite taking the wickets that she took in that final, was an average village bowler, and things like that the day after they won the World Cup. And then if you look at the comments underneath that article, there's 1,000 odd comments where you've got people going back and forth saying exactly the same kind of similar things, like it's so boring, there's no entertainment value, they're weaker than men, and all these other things to dismiss them as legitimate athletes. And it's just so unnecessary. Like, I just don't understand where that comes from. And the players, they might be able to deal with it and they can shift it aside. But like you said earlier, if there's a young girl or somebody like looking at those kind of comments, being like, "Oh,
yeah, why would they bother?
Cricket's not a game. Yeah, cricket's not a game for me. I belong back in the kitchen," or whatever else may be.
Absolutely. It's such an impressionable age. The crowning achievement of England women, and that's what appears in the media.
The day after, obviously there's some brilliant other stuff, but the things that hits you harder is those bits which is pushing you away and saying, "Do you know what, this game isn't for you."
So do you find, as a fan and someone in the media, do you find that your opinions have to be perfect 24/7?
The amount of times I'll write a tweet and delete them because I've got no confidence in my opinion and stuff. And the interesting word with fan as well, because that's something that growing up, I kind of internalized a lot, and especially with football, to be fair, was, "Oh, women can't play sport and stuff," because that's what I was told. It was only when I was in my teens that I realised that that was a load of rubbish. And why was I joining on this bandwagon of, "No, I'm not going to watch a women's game, that's not proper football," or whatever else? Like, I had to unpick that quite a lot. And that's where kind of this passion comes from as well, I guess, because when you kind of get drilled in from a young age or whatever, even being a girl, to kind of resist women's sport because it's not proper, it's so toxic and it's so terrible, and it's horrible to say, but I'm saying it because I think it's important to actually like recognize how other people can influence your opinions and stuff when you are growing up and when you are young, and how you have to actively challenge that. And I want to be part of the solution now and not part of the problem. And I've gone off on a complete derail of what you mentioned. What was the question? Sorry.
I asked if you find that your opinions have to always be 100% right.
I just get scared, I think, of what people are going to say, because I've just seen so many people be trolled and be criticised because they are women. Even doing things like this, like I'll get anxiety over this. I'll be worried thinking, "Oh God, is somebody going to comment on something that I've said?" And
by that bit where you forgot the question a minute ago.
Yeah, literally. But like, doing like our own podcast and stuff, I get so worried about the way I talk and just everything, because I used to be I still do lack confidence and everything and stuff, but doing this is so outside my comfort zone. It's becoming more normal and I'm becoming confident with it now. But I used to run out of the room like crying, trying to do a presentation. So I've come a long way, but those anxieties are still there. What are people going to say? And I shouldn't care about what other people think or whatever. I should just back myself more. But as a woman as well, it's not just backing your own opinion. It feels like you're doing it for the girls as well.
Yeah.
And I don't want to let the girls down.
Well, I host a Birmingham City podcast, and a good 80% of what I say is utter nonsense. But I've got no sort of worries about saying it, because people will just tell me it's nonsense, and then 10 minutes later they forget about it. They don't care. But I've spoke to some girls on this Her Game 2 podcast, and they say the same. They say every tweet, each word is broken down, and you better make sure it's right. I've had, I won't name her, but a female friend of mine occasionally will send me her tweets to see if she's got the information right. I mean, just send it. Like, why? Who cares? But unfortunately, it's almost like you have to care, because you'll be overanalyzed. And if you get anything, if I get something wrong, it's because my memory is like a sieve and I just forgot. If you got something wrong, it's because you're a woman.
Yeah, and I overanalyze myself as well. So it's not just other people doing it; it's myself. I'm like, have I done this right? Have I forgotten something? Like, it's not just putting it out there and somebody say, oh, you've got this wrong. I'm constantly then thinking, wait, this has to be 100% perfect, like you mentioned. But the worst thing as well, which I want to flag up as well, is the rise of female content creators and how they're kind of responded to as well. The comments aren't just about mainstream media or players directly, but also like the Abby Slades and the Rhiannon Blakes, who are now creating content, getting into that recreational game. The comments that they're getting on TikTok and things like that are absolutely horrendous. And Abby Slade put out some screenshots of what she was experiencing not so long ago. And her bowling technique is interesting. She'll admit that herself. But who cares? Because
exactly, who cares?
She's having fun. Yeah. She's having fun. But the comments, there's hundreds of comments of people being like, one of the worst ones was like, my dead grandma who has no arms could bowl better than you.
Jesus.
And things like that, which is like, she's played it off really well though, and she's put another kind of TikTok up being like, I'm not very good at bowling, so I want to see how bad you are. Show me your worst bowling moment and things like that. So she's playing it off really well, but mentally, if I'm just coming to play cricket for the first time, joining a new club, and I want to, record my experiences and share with other people to inspire them to do the same, if all I'm getting back is you don't belong here, by blokes as well, it's constantly blokes and stuff. You didn't belong here. Why are you here? Like, give up. You don't, like, why would I stick around?
Why bother?
Whereas guys can post content of themselves bowling and batting and doing some absolute village stuff, and people laugh at it, but they laugh at it not based on their gender. Whereas it gets personal with those girls in particular, seeing the stuff that they've been through recently, it's so personal and it's so attacking. It's not funny.
Yeah, we find that in the footballing side of Her Game too. It takes seconds for things to get personal and about appearance and whatnot. People will take the mick out of me online all the time, but it's usually jokes that I've already made about myself being, I don't know, ginger or whatever, or it's about me being thick and my knowledge not quite being as it should. They never mention the fact that I'm male. But I find this with when I talk to the Her Game 2 girls, it's always what you look like. Straight away, it's what you look like. And it's just so personal and cutting and just unnecessary.
Well, that's the thing with this as well. That's why I kind of asked you about whether it's audio or video, because I was thinking, I need to look okay, because otherwise people are going to comment on my appearance. And then I haven't got any makeup on. My face has gone really red and blotchy and stuff. And I've got to the point where I don't really care.
Good.
But at the same time, it does worry me. I'm thinking, oh God, I look awful. Oh, is somebody going to comment on that? Because like, if you want to be a presenter and stuff, there's historically been a typical way that women look in the media. And I'm not that ideal at all. So then for me, I've got this, a bit of anxiousness around that kind of thing. Like, oh, people are going to be like, oh, she's not this, she's not that kind of thing. But then blokes can be as
fat
whatever
as
they
like.
come. Yeah, as ever they come like. Yeah. Whatever you look like, it doesn't matter. But for women, especially kind of like on TV and everything, they are generally very kind of like made up and hyper feminized, and westernized kind of femininity and proper idealized, which is absolutely fine. And again, it's about the choice and everything there, but there has historically been only one way of being, whereas now that is shifting and it is changing, and we are
Do you
seeing
think it
far more
is?
diversity.
Do you think it actually is?
I think so in some spaces and stuff, and I don't see as many kind of women in thinking back kind of 90s, early noughties and stuff, but like proper low cut tops with like boobs out and short dresses, and the camera production values were just focused on their legs and boobs and the rest of it. Obviously, again, it's all about choice. So if people want to wear kind of low cut tops, absolutely feel free. It's not for anyone else to kind of sexualize them, but that was the only option and the only thing that you kind of would see. Whereas now you see more women in kind of like the power suits and wearing kind of just whatever they want, like more their style rather than being put into something, I think. But at the same time, that might not necessarily be the case. It's just what I've kind of noticed. And but still, again, the makeup thing is personal choice, but I don't know how much choice people do get in that, and whether they are comfortable, whether they're loving it or hating it. And
I wonder if things like that are enforced by the media companies these days, or whether it's their own sort of internal anxieties and preconceptions of how they should look. I'd like to think that the media aren't still trying to force them to wear these dresses and short low-cut tops and short dresses and whatnot, but who knows.
Yeah, well, hopefully it is all about individual choice and what people feel comfortable in and everything. And again, it's not for us to kind of judge and say, oh, she's looking, super sexualized and it's male gaze or whatever else. I think it's hard, isn't it? Because I think when you get that one option of like hypersexualized and you're told that's a tactic to reduce women to just sexual objects and stuff, but then you've also got that sexual freedom and liberation and choice of actually, being sexy doesn't necessarily have to be just for men. Like it can be for yourself. So that tension in itself is a whole other ball game to explore and try and work out: is it reductive and trivial, or is it empowering, and can it be both?
Yeah, definitely. So her game too. We have branched out into cricket. It was kind of thrust upon us, shall we say. Gloucestershire County Cricket Club approached us, as well as Western Storm, and asked if we thought of expanding into cricket. The end game is to expand into every sport. But certainly we jumped at the chance to form a partnership with them, and then we picked up a few grassroots teams as well. But for yourself, when did you first become aware of her game too?
Since you kind of started it, to be honest, and it's a conversation that I've wanted to have from a women's cricket chat perspective. Like, we've been wanting to jump on board with you guys for quite some time. It's just been time getting in the way, because football, I think football and cricket are in very different stages of development when it comes to the women's game especially, but the overall sports share a lot of similarities in terms of the sexism experienced. But I think because of how more mainstream football is, you hear about it a lot more, whereas with cricket, it can be a little bit more hidden. So I think there's a lot that both sports can learn from one another in terms of how we can keep progressing women's space within sport generally. And hopefully, like you say, you're going to other sports too. But the work that you've been doing in football is so much needed. And for me, I've had experiences when I was younger and stuff around kind of like men's sport and everything, but kind of I distanced myself away from it. So I stopped being kind of a fan of teams and things like that because of whatever went on and everything. So now seeing women actively kind of use their voices and call out the sexism that they experience, it actually makes me think, well, actually, I could go to a game. I know that there's people there fighting for me. I know I belong in the stadiums. I know I can go and sit and be a fan because I've distanced myself from being a fan for so long across any kind of men's sport, to be honest. So that work is just absolutely phenomenal, and it's a shame that it needs to be done because in an ideal world you wouldn't exist, and I guess you're working to your non-existence because that would be the end goal, that we don't have to have these conversations about the inequalities that women face and the sexism and everything else that we've put up for far too long. Like, it's an endemic, isn't it?
Yeah.
Absolute endemic. And historically, it's been such a long problem. We're still having the same experiences that women have had for centuries, if not longer. And now it's time to move on and get these things changed. And I think the campaign is just going to hopefully do that in so many ways for cricket, as well as what you've achieved in football.
Hopefully, yeah, hopefully. There's a strong push towards grassroots stuff on the football side, which I'm particularly passionate about. It'd be great to push that into cricket as well. As I say, it was hard for me. I couldn't even name a cricket team when I was a kid. I certainly couldn't have named you a girls' football team, cricket team. Sorry. So it'd be great. Hopefully, if we eradicate sexism, the grassroots bit will still be there, and I'll still have a purpose in life. But
that's the thing with grassroots as well, because I've seen a few comments online. There was somebody who really politely as well was just like, oh, I don't think cricket had much of a problem because there's so many kind of more girls teams and women's teams on the go. But at the same time, are those spaces reflective of what the women and girls do need? Like, are there sanitary bins in the change rooms? Are there even changing rooms? The amount of times that I grew up, although like playing men's cricket, but I had to get changed in a field with 4 blokes holding a towel around me because there was no changing facilities, let alone when I needed to go for a wee and had to pee in a bush kind of thing. Which is easy for blokes, but a bit harder for women, especially in a public playing field. And, you know, are there facilities there for women? Because women do have different needs. And at that grassroots level, is your club accepting, or have you got people commenting saying, oh, why are they here, and the rest of it? You know, there's a lot of work that needs to be done at that grassroots level to make the game welcoming for everyone.
Yeah, definitely. I think, as you say, are you just there as the token woman, or are you there as a valued member of that team and that squad? With an equal voice. Hopefully Her Game 2 Cricket will push for that voice to be amplified a bit. But in terms of at the grounds, obviously we know there's sexism in football. There's no getting around that, and all the girls involved with Her Game 2 will tell you story after story about it. Are there any, like, do you think it's as big a problem on the terraces of the county grounds?
I think format dependent as well.
I was going to ask about that. Do you think it changes?
Yeah, I think from working in it and being external ears rather than being sat as a fan, and from what I've heard from women as fans within kind of the stadium and some stuff, quite a lot of it is, if you go to a county championship match, it'll be kind of like, do you know the rules, and patronising kind of comments, which some people perhaps don't see as very harmful, and they think it's quite, you know, harmless to, you know, oh, are you here to watch your boyfriend, or are you, you know, oh, where's your dad, where's your brother, where's, you know, it's like, well, no, I'm here for myself. And a young girl the other day mentioned it to me, 17-year-old, and she said she went to a match on her own and bumped into Mark Robinson, former England's women's coach, won the 2017 World Cup and everything. And she was still talking to him. But before that, the boys that she was sat near were kind of quizzing her to see if she was a proper fan and knew her stuff. But the minute she went over and spoke to him, because she'd interviewed him previously, they were kind of like, oh, okay, she knows him.
Yeah.
I guess she had to do that she didn't do that to prove that she was legitimate, but by doing that, it proved that she was legitimate. But I think the T20 crowds, and even despite the 100 being family friendly in some ways, there's still kind of some of the stag do's and that kind of stuff which are really problematic towards women. And I've heard people shout out, you know, show us your tits and things like that, which obviously it is horrendous. But I think, like I said, it depends on the format 100%. I think county championship is a little bit friendlier but patronising. And then T20 is definitely more lads, booze. If you're not into that kind of drinking culture, then it can be uncomfortable for some women. Some women absolutely love that kind of culture and stuff, but that doesn't mean that they deserve to be treated in horrendous and have that lad banter, which isn't banter. You know, if you're getting sexualized and comments about your appearance or whatever else it may be. And just when I was younger and stuff, experiencing some people saying, I'm working out whether to share it or whether not to share it and stuff. But there was somebody who did say to me once, "Hey, pussy, what are you doing?" and things like that,
Oh,
when I was
wow.
in my accreditation and everything. Which, yeah, I find it uncomfortable to talk about, but obviously it needs to be spoken about because
Yeah.
that is kind of real experiences that women do face. And I think for me, something that I'm very aware of is in my kind of younger years, in my kind of 16, 17, 18 kind of period and everything, I think I was a bystander for far too much of it. Now, no, with my confidence and knowing what I know now, I would never have stood for any of the stuff that I stood for back then. And times have hopefully changed since that moment and those kind of days and everything, but it does remind me that there is much work to be done, and alcohol can't always be used as an excuse.
Absolutely, absolutely. I always assume that the longer form of the game would be more sort of old boys club. You're not welcome here, sort of viewpoints,
Yeah.
which hopefully has changed. I don't know. And yeah, the shorter form is more. I mean, there's times where Edgbaston's got a little bit rowdy. After the challenge with a 100 night or a T20 night is to drink as much as you physically can, as quick as you physically can, and unfortunately that leads to the lad banter that you talk about. But hopefully Her Game 2 Cricket will sort of step in, and we are with football, we've got like a reporting system, which anyone watching this from the cricketing side is open to you as well. It's open to anyone, really. If you go on the website hergame2.co.uk, there's a reporting form on there. Fill it all in, put your contact details or report it anonymous, whatever. If there is somewhere we can step in and get answers as to why certain things were allowed to happen, we will step in with that, and our ambassadors all aim to do so. And we're hoping to set up these ambassadors for all the county cricket clubs and all the women's teams and all the grassroots teams, everyone, hopefully. Fingers crossed. But we are coming up to the hour mark, so I will finish on my final question. South East Stars versus Central Sparks. Who goes on to face Southern Vipers in the final of the Charlotte Edwards Cup? Who wins the whole thing? And why is the answer to both those questions Central Sparks?
Oh, see, I'm gonna upset you here.
I'll just end the call now.
Yeah, I think so. With Sparks, if Izzy Wong gets going, now she's got this new role at the top of the order, and they accelerate beyond the reach of the Stars, which the Stars have got a very good bowling and batting lineup. They've got a lot of depth on their piece of paper there. It's going to be a very interesting game, but I do think that the Stars, as defending champions, are going to knock out the Sparks. And when it comes to Stars versus Vipers, I think. See, the other day I was like 100% of the Vipers will do it. And now I'm thinking, actually, if they've got momentum from that first game going into the second game, and Bryony Smith's having an absolute indomitable, I can't say that word, a phenomenal time. Now I'm thinking maybe Stars could do it. I think it's going to be hotly contested, but a lot of people are backing the Vipers. They're 6 from 6. Will they be a bit too complacent, having a little break before their final slot? I'm not too sure. That's a very good question. Now you've got me. I'm swaying at the moment. I'm going back and forth.
You haven't said much about Sparks winning it, which worries me a bit.
Yeah, I'm sorry. To be fair, now I'm thinking, I think Stars could defend their title, but I don't know. I was so fixated on thinking Vipers would do it the other day.
Sparks, though.
Now, yeah. But not, I don't think hopefully Sparks will do it, because then it will prove me wrong and it will show that I actually do know nothing about cricket.
Exactly.
Yeah. And to be fair, Sparks have had a good run of it, but I think because they've lost that momentum losing to Storm the other day, I think it's sometimes it's harder to come back. Whereas if you're on that winning flow and the Stars are finding form at the right time, their scores are improving and the right people are stepping up in the right time. So sitting on the fence too much.
Are you going to it?
I'm going to try and see it, / if not, I'll be on the sofa. It depends how much work I get done this week because I'm meant to have started my maternity and I'm behind at the moment. So,
Oh no.
Yeah, my plan was I was meant to be on maternity leave all week and that was going to be a highlight of the week. But yeah,
Work
it's
gets
not
in the
going to
way.
plan at the moment.
No, never mind, never mind. I'll be at a wedding, unfortunately, but I'll have it on my phone, so there you go.
Yeah, I would say if not sofa fan, it will be.
That's what it'll be. So, thank you very much, Hannah, for coming on the first ever Her Game 2 Cricket Podcast. I'm sure this won't be the last we hear from you. Tell people again where they can find Women's Cricket Chat.
Yeah, so you can find us across all social media at W Cricket Chat. And if you want to get in touch with me, it's at HannahT1194 on Twitter. And I'm happy to help anybody who's interested in women's cricket with anything media related. Hopefully I can open some doors for people and set up some connections if that's an area that you're passionate about, or if you want to find out where you can get involved with local teams and that kind of stuff. I'm also happy to just help signpost wherever I can. And yeah, just come get involved with cricket. It's a great sport to be a part of, and there's a lot of young women especially kind of paving the way for others at the moment. So come and have some fun.
Absolutely. Couldn't say it better myself. Hannah, it's been an absolute pleasure. Loved every second of it. Thank you very much, everyone out there, for watching. Thank you, Hannah, for joining me. And I'll see you when I see you. Bye-bye.